All right, and we back. Gonna talk a little bit about college football. Not really college football, but yeah, I mean, but it's college football. Just football in general. Obviously, college football's over. The NFL's over. We're looking forward to the draft. Free agency's kind of, entering the forefront. There was a video the other day of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders working out together, and they were just shit talking to each other the whole time, and it was crazy because I mean, like both of these guys, they're gonna go 1-2, 1-2-3. Don't really where, but it was interesting to see them just kind of trashing each other about not winning the bowl games or being tired during a workout or Shedeur Sanders just being a bubble. Screen merchant, excuse me, was Cam Ward was throwing on the field, yada yada yada. It's interesting. I think these guys are going to be two of the top 5 picks in the draft, and they were obviously incredible this season in college football. Speaking of Colorado, very interesting that Deion Sanders. I didn't know this, that he didn't do this last year, but Deion Sanders didn't make any recruiting trips for the second straight season. Didn't make it last year. Didn't make any this year. He has yet to take advantage of the quote $200,000 in annual budget for private air travel recruiting. I don't really understand how he's managing to recruit so well. 14 commitments in the 2025 class and then 17 transfers. So 31 new guys. Obviously, Colorado's undergoing a lot of overhaul this season, but it'll be interesting, right? I mean, like a team like Brian Kelly, 257 off-campus visits and 46 home visits. Matt Rule, 486 off-campus visits in that same span for the last 2 years. I don't know. He recruits through media appearances rather than in person. I don't know. I don't know why he's not doing it. I don't know how it's affecting him. Obviously, they had a season better than Matt Rule and objectively better than LSU. So maybe doing it through the media is the best way to do it, but it just seems very interesting to me that this is the strategy he's choosing to use. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, 2 guys projected to go top, I'd say 3, 5, top worst. It's going to be a big draw for guys to go play for Colorado, considering, I can coach you into being some of the best players in the country, in the world, and, whatever. Obviously, quarterback-wise, they're going to have Julian Lewis or Caden Salter, excuse me. But it'll be interesting to see what Colorado does. Speaking of going into next season, I want to talk about offensive players, who can help their draft stock during this season. So essentially, if you play up during this season, who can continue to rise up draft boards. We're going to start off with the quarterbacks. I got 8 quarterbacks I want to talk about. Starting off, again, not doing them in any order, but Drew Aller. Drew Aller had the best season of his career at Penn State, 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. The problem is the way it ended, a game-sealing, a dumb pick in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame. At the end of the day, Penn State's going to be right back in the mix. They bring back Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton. Offensive coordinator Andy Cuddelneck will just have more time with him. Penn State looks like a national championship contender, and that could prove beneficial for Drew Aller. Next up, a transfer in Fernando Mendoza. If you don't know who Fernando Mendoza was, don't blame me. He spent his entire last year at Cal. Cal was a good team, not a great team, but he threw for 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's transferring to Indiana. Indiana obviously losing Curtis Rourke. And he's got to bring in a guy to help win and build on last year's season. Obviously, 11 wins for Indiana was incredible. I think Mendoza has the talent to lead Indiana to an even bigger year. Indiana has a tougher schedule this season than they did last year, playing both Oregon and Penn State. I believe both on the road. But regardless, those are going to be some brutal games. But I think Fernando Mendoza has a chance to really rise up draft boards. Sticking with the transfer theme, Carson Beck out of Miami. Carson Beck obviously transferred from Georgia to Miami. Everybody knows who Carson Beck is. He could have gone to the draft. I'm surprised he didn't. He did throw a career-high 12 interceptions. Career-high 12 interceptions is crazy because that's not that much. I mean, it's a lot, but it's, what they played as 15, 16 game schedule, so he threw a pick a game, which, obviously isn't great. But in the last 2 seasons, almost at 74,000 yards, 7,400 yards, 18 touchdowns. At the end of the day, if he can lead Miami to a playoff berth, Cam Ward wasn't able to do that. He's going to go top 3 in the draft. If he can do that for Miami, he'll go in the first round. Again, sticking with the transfer theme, John Mateer from Oklahoma. If you don't know who John Mateer is, he was the quarterback at Washington State. Washington State was a very sneaky dark horse team to make the playoff. I would say about week 10. I think they were at 9-1. They only lost to Boise State. They were as high as, I think, 15 or 18, there was a chance they made it, but threw for 3,100 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's transferring to Oklahoma. He's going to have a much bigger spotlight on his back this year in the SEC with Oklahoma. But if he can elevate Oklahoma to an SEC contender, Mateer's draft stock is going to go through the roof. Next up, same with quarterbacks, but we're back to guys that have not transferred. Arch Manning. Quinn Ewers is going to the NFL. It is officially Arch Manning's season in Austin. He's only completed 63 passes in his last 2 seasons as a Longhorn, but Ewers was hurt last year. He had a chance to really play. At the end of the day, the hype surrounding Arch Manning is real. If he can play well this season, he has a chance to legit go number 1 next year. Next up, Nico Iamaleava. I mean, listen, Nico didn't really have to do too much. 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, only had 5 interceptions, but definitely was leaning more on Dylan Sampson than anything else. But at the end of the day, if he can improve his numbers, it'll boost his stock significantly. And if they can, go farther in the playoffs instead of making it just to the first round, here's a chance again. Nico Iamaleava, Arch Manning, they have a legit chance to go 1-2 next year. So very, very loaded quarterback class coming into this season. Another guy who could have went this year, Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. He was obviously going to be a top 10 quarterback in this draft. Last year was his first season as a starter. 4,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in 13 games. So just under an interception a game. If he has another season like that, potentially leading LSU back to the playoffs, definitely going to have a chance to be a top 5 quarterback, top 10 pick in the draft. And finally, again, someone that you probably didn't know about until later in the season, but Sam Leavitt from Arizona State. Obviously, the quarterback for Arizona State helped lead Arizona State to the Big 12 title in a college football semi for a quarterfinal, almost beat Texas. 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. If he can improve on that, he can lead Arizona State back to the Big 12 championship, back to the playoffs without Cam Scatabo, Sam Leavitt's going to be a top pick. Going to talk about some running backs. I'm going to go back to Penn State, right? Katron Allen, Nick Singleton both decided to come back. They're going to be a national title contender for a couple of reasons. 2 of them were in that backfield, and those 2. They combined for 2,200 yards, 20 touchdowns, and Singleton had 41 receptions and 400 yards and 5 touchdowns in the air. If they both get 1,000 yards, which is what they had this past season, their ceilings and their stock are going to go through the roof, and Penn State should probably be in the lead for the national championship contention. Going to switch things up, talk about a transfer. Obviously, we have talked about some transfers, but at the running back position, Mekhi Hughes at Oregon. Mekhi Hughes had 2,800 yards and 22 touchdowns in 2 years at Tulane. Tulane leaned on him a lot. Now he's going to transfer to the Oregon Ducks, right? He needs to replace Jordan James. Jordan James is obviously amazing for Oregon. If he can help lead them back to the playoff, just continue to help the Oregon Ducks rise as a program in the Big Ten, Hughes would be a big riser and a big beneficiary of that. Back to guys who, did not transfer, but CJ Baxter, right, is a true freshman in 2023, 650 yards, 5 touchdowns, did not play at all last season, right? So I don't know if he can declare. Oh, he took a redshirt, so technically he could enter the draft this past season, but he'll only be a sophomore. He can have a breakout season this year with the Texas Longhorns, help ease Arch Manning, help lead Texas back to the playoffs, potentially to a national championship. His stock is going to go through the roof. And finally, another transfer. We're going to talk about C.J. Donaldson for Ohio State. He spent 3 years at West Virginia, 2,000 yards, 30 touchdowns in 3 years. So, what is that, 800 yards-ish, 700 yards-ish, and 10 touchdowns a season. That's pretty damn good for Donaldson. Ohio State's replacing both Quinshon Judkins and TreVeyon Henderson. So they're losing a lot of production, but if Donaldson can get 1,000 yards on the ground, he's going to fly up boards. Next up, I want to talk about some receivers. At the end of the day, we're going to talk about a couple transfer guys, right? Nick Anderson transfers from Oklahoma to LSU. Did not play at all in 2024. But in 2023, he had a solid redshirt campaign, 38 receptions, 800 yards, 10 touchdowns. And now he'll technically be in the same boat as TJ Baxter, where you're technically a sophomore, but you can declare. Garrett Nussmeier is looking for a go-to target. Nick Anderson can be that guy. If he is, you're going to look at Nick Anderson to fly up boards. Eric Singleton, another guy transferred into the SEC from Georgia Tech, 1,500 yards and 9 touchdowns in 2 seasons, so 750 and 4 to 5 touchdowns each year. Jackson Arnold's transferring to Auburn. Obviously, he's looking to raise his stock, but if Eric Singleton can help lead Auburn to a bowl game, maybe even push 8 wins this year, I think Singleton's going to be a huge reason for that. And at the end of the day, his stock is going to improve drastically because of it. I don't know if I said receivers or tight end. I meant to say pass catchers because I do want to talk about Max Clare. Max Clare had a great season with Purdue. 51 receptions, 685 yards, 4 touchdowns. They won 1 game. So that's incredible. Transferring to Ohio State, and he's going to be incredible, right? You're expecting Julian Sand to be a quarterback this year. I mean, he's obviously only a sophomore, so he's not expected to get draft buzz, at least for now. But Max Clare is a big get, and you're expecting him to be a focal point of an offense that is losing a lot of talent. I think Max Clare, if he can have a great season, he can be a dynamic tight end for the Buckeyes and their offense. He has a chance to really shoot up draft boards because this tight end class is really weak compared to this year's. And finally, the only wide receiver I want to talk about that isn't, or the only pass catcher that isn't a transfer, Antonio Williams at Clemson. 75 catches for 900 yards and 11 touchdowns in 14 games. So he was almost, 80 yards and a touchdown each game, which is incredible. Cade Klubnik's obviously coming back, so you're going to see their connection just continue to get better. If Clemson can make it out of the first round of the playoffs, potentially win the ACC this year, not win the ACC, but get a top 4 seed and make a national championship push, it's going to be on the back of Antonio Williams, and his draft stock is going to go flying. 2 guys I do want to talk about that aren't going to get drafted this year because they can't. Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, right? Both of these guys had fantastic seasons. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith, a national champion. Ryan Williams had a hell of a season, had potentially the play of the season in the catch against Georgia. Ryan Williams, 48 catches, 865 yards, 8 touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. I mean, Smith had a better season for sure. Both of them going to have new quarterbacks, right? Williams, you're expecting it's going to be Ty Simpson. If he can have big numbers under two different quarterbacks, his stock is going to skyrocket. He's already projected to be a top X receiver in that class, top X pick, maybe 10, 5, 8. And Jeremiah Smith has already been facing double teams. We'll see, like Texas did that, and they tried to just bracket him, and it worked, but you lose the game because of it. But at the end of the day, if they can both put up numbers with different defenses and different quarterbacks, it will be noticed by NFL scouts. And going into the 26-27 draft, they're going to be the top two receivers. And I'm sure they already are, but because they're so good so young, you have to continue to put out tape and you have to continue to produce, or else, your stock might go down. But yeah, that's it. Obviously, I think college football is in a very precarious place with everything that's going on with the playoffs, and the Big Ten and the SEC trying to fucking put their cock on everything. It's annoying as hell. Listen, we get you guys are the best, and you guys had the most teams. It's not like we were arguing for teams not to make it over you guys, but just, we want everybody to have a fair chance. If you're the best, prove it on the field. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to see me talk about anything else or any other video, you know what to do. Make sure to comment down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and YouTube thinks you're going to like this video. Find out if they're right.